session right now. We have an introduction as well as a vote of thanks also in the coming also. So we have lined up, like we have Anuja for the introduction of the speaker. Like, over to you, Anuja.
Good evening all and hearty welcome to weekly alumni interaction. Now with immense pleasure, let me invite our guest today, Ms. Shanna James. She completed her BTech in Biotechnology from Met School of Engineering and completed her PGDM from Rajagiri Business School. She has worked in South Indian Bank and currently at Cummins. Ms. Shanna is a well-known personality in the field of training specialization. She has dealt with diverse employee roles and functions. Ma'am, welcome to Rajagiri.
Thank you so much, Anuja. I wish I could see you while doing that introduction. I miss seeing your beautiful face there. Okay, there you go. Should we get started?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to present my screen and let me know once you all can see it. I hope you all are able to hear me fine.
Yes, you are.
Sounds good. If you can see my screen, let me know.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much for that very warm welcome. And of course, it's quite exciting to be invited to the college where you were once a student. And I'm feeling very nostalgic right now, seeing all of you all sitting on those benches. You know, those happen to be the benches that we have used at some point in time. So it's quite overwhelming. And I cannot thank Rajagiri enough for the opportunity at hand over here. So as you have already seen probably in one of the invites and you see my screen as well, what I'm going to talk to you all about is your skill sets, right? We're going to talk about transferable skills and soft skills and how can you actually progress from, you know, being in college to landing your first corporate job. That's going to be our discussion. However, what I'm going to speak to you about is based on my experience with Rajagiri, right? How I was a student there and what I learned there. I'm not here talking about skills from a training specialist point of view. I'm not here representing my organization. I am here as a senior talking to you about what can you expect, right? And how do you capitalize on some of the opportunities that a college gives you. But I quickly wanted to speak to you all about myself a little bit. I was actually born and raised in Mumbai and I settled in Kerala in 2003. And it's been about 18 years that I've settled here. And my entire education happened in, of course, Kerala. To be very precise, Thrissur. To be very precise, Chalakudi. That's where I come from. So I have a BTech in biotechnology, as Anuja was telling you all, and that was from Met School of Engineering. And when I was putting this career path down, or probably my journey down, I thought I'll pick up one thing from each of my experiences that stood out for me. So if I were to talk about my experience when I was doing my BTech, or the one thing that stood out for me, or the recognition that stood out for me was being adjudged as Kalatilagam in one of the arts events there. It was an intra-college arts event. So I did my BTech, completed that in 2012, and I immediately joined Rajagiri. It took me, of course, 2 years to finish my course in PGDM. So I was a PGDM student, PGDM A specifically, if I had to point out, and my specialization was in HR and marketing. But when I was in Rajagiri, I had received an opportunity to go to Germany on a scholarship that's called the DAD scholarship. Like some of you all would probably have heard of, you know, your alumni or your seniors or your immediate seniors who have received the scholarship. So I was one of those lucky people to have received that scholarship where I got to represent Rajagiri in Germany and completed about 2 semesters of my PGDM there. And the credits of that got transferred to Rajagiri. So I completed my PGDM in 2014, post which I got a campus placement immediately from Rajagiri. I joined the South Indian Bank, which was one of the companies that were coming at that point in time. And you don't see a special accomplishment there when I speak about South Indian Bank.
Excuse me, ma'am. Yes. Sorry to interrupt you. Can you just wait for 2 minutes because the audio is little bit feeble?
Okay.
So we'll rectify it by then.
Okay, no problem. Let's do that.
Yeah. Ma'am, yeah, you can continue because we had an audio issue. We have rectified it. Like many
Yeah.
people will be joining through Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
ma'am.
right. I do see some people who come in through Zoom. I'm
Like
assuming.
others will be joining through the Zoom in like through phones.
Okay. Okay. So do you want me to wait for them or should we get started then?
Yeah, yeah. We'll wait for 1 minute.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
Ma'am, yeah, you can resume it.
Okay. Are you able to hear me fine now?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not sure if the others who have joined, they probably have their audios on, which is actually glitching a little bit. People have joined in through Zoom on your phones. Could you mute yourself?
Unable to
Okay.
Ma'am, you can continue.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So I'm not sure how much of it were you able to hear, but I'm going to quickly go back to Rajagiri bit because I think that's the piece of information that you all probably relate to better. So I did my PGDM in Rajagiri between 2012 and 2014. And I was talking about that time in Rajagiri when I was awarded a scholarship, which is called the DAD scholarship, wherein students from Rajagiri were selected to go to Germany and represent our college at an international stage. So in addition to, the 4 semesters that I did in Rajagiri during my PGDM, 2 of it were completed in Germany, the credits of which got transferred. And during my stint at Rajagiri, I also remember being a FORMS member. I hope that's how it's called even today, which is the Forum of Rajagiri Management Students. And of course, I was an active member in a lot of the other cultural activities that Rajagiri held. Once I completed my education, the same year I got placed with South Indian Bank. I worked there as a relationship officer. And the stint was about a year and a half. And I've mentioned few things that I carry with me during every stage of my, of my career. But specifically when it comes to South Indian Bank, one thing that I've learned is I probably didn't enjoy that work as much, which is why I got married after that employment with South Indian Bank and I moved to Pune. And I was looking for an opportunity there, and the Cummins opportunity happened to happen. So during our interaction, I will talk to you all about how I landed my Cummins job, and how it was a great, or how Rajagiri was a great learning experience that contributed to it. But before I do that, I do have some pictures on the screen. I'm not sure if you all have noticed it already. For example, you see actually the excerpt of a newspaper article wherein me and 2 of my friends who had gotten the DAD scholarship, that was a news in one of the online medium that day. I think it was Times, I don't quite remember. And this is something that I carry with me, I really cherish today. The other picture that you see is, of course, a picture from my wedding. And in addition to my husband who's standing right next to me, there's also another gentleman in that picture. That happens to be my elder brother, who's also a Rajagiri alumni. Okay, so when I was studying in Rajagiri, his name is Robin. Robin was my immediate senior. And I've been in Cummins from since about 2016 October, and I work there as an employee training specialist. So what my responsibility is to manage the onboarding program for any new hire who joins Cummins. So I manage the onboarding program for all of Cummins in India today. And I am also a master facilitator. What it means is that when it comes to mandatory policy related trainings, we have employees across the globe, right? So Cummins has employees across 190 countries, and there are HR partners across these 190 countries. So being a master facilitator, one of my role is to train these HR partners so they can go on facilitate these sessions. So I am actually the master facilitator for Asia Pacific as well. This quickly summarizes my small journey, though it's been about 7 years since I passed out from Rajagiri. Though a small journey, I'm very, very, very certain that this is a journey that has just begun. I just wanted to take this time to speak to you all about my personal life before we actually got into discussing our topic today. So what are we going to talk about? Okay, before we get into the topic, I have some ground rules. The ground rules would be, of course, feel free to interrupt me should you have any question. The second would be, if you all have anything to add or any question to ask me, make sure you address me by my name and not call me madam. So anyone who's been there managing the talk today, I would appreciate it if you call me by my first name. I feel more comfortable when you'll do that. And of course, my request would be to stay clear from your phones. Of course, some of you all are connected on Zoom via your phone, which is fine. But otherwise, I'll really appreciate it if you could keep the distractions away. And as far as the classroom is concerned, I see all of you all who are sitting there. I also see Ritik. I also wanted to quickly let you all know that Ritik happens to be my batchmate. We were together in Rajagiri the same year. Ritik was in MBA, I was in PGDM. So I've known him before this as well. All right, now that the ground rules are out of the way, let's quickly talk about what is it that Prince, can you mute yourself? All right, thanks, Prince. All right, so what are we going to learn today? We're going to do 3 things today. All right, so one would be the learning methodology that we're going to have today is we learn, we'll discover, and we'll try and apply. So when I say learn, we learn what are hard skills, what are soft skills, and what are transferable skills. Okay, that's what we're going to learn today. The second thing that we would do is we would discover what skills you possess. How do you identify the skills that you possess, and how do you nurture them? And the third thing that we would talk about is how can you apply the skills that you have learned to land a corporate job. Okay, so it's going to be learn, discover, and apply. And the first topic today, of course, would be to understand what are hard skills, what are soft skills, and what are these transferable skills that you've been seeing on my title slide. Now, let me tell you, when you actually look for a job on various job sites, like LinkedIn or Naukri or Indeed, when you look at the job description of each of these jobs, you will find certain keywords, right? There'll be keywords in all of these job postings. And often you will find keywords like communication or multitasking or critical thinking or leadership skills of the like. And if I may call it so, but these keywords are basically, those secret language that employers use to get to the right job hunters. So if you are a job hunter who understands the keywords, it's very possible that you will end up getting the job. Now, what are these keywords that I'm talking about? These keywords happen to be the skills that will enable you to do that job, no matter if you have a prior experience or not, or whether you have an experience that may be not quite related to the job that you're applying for. All right. So understand that when you look at a job posting, you'll find certain keywords and they're most likely skills. Some of them that you already possess. Okay, you may already have them. Some of them you could develop. And some of them that comes with a formal education, a training, a license, things like that. Now, what are we going to talk about? So you see a list of skills on my screen right now. Okay, there are skills like computer programming, then there's a degree, there's something called analytical skills, there's teamwork, project management, communication, work ethic, knowing a foreign language, time management, and leadership skills. All right, so you see a lot of skills on the screen. Now, if I were to pick a few of them, for example, consider computer programming. If there's a computer engineer out there, he or she would know it better. But computer programming would be writing a program or a code that will instruct a computer, a software, or an application to perform a certain responsibility or execute a task, right? That happens to be what I would call as a hard skill, right? People can be taught computer programming, and a person who's good at computer programming, well, his skill sets could be measured. Right? Whether he's able to write a good code, right? Whether he's able to execute a task in hand or a task provided to him. But look at the other skills, skills like teamwork. Okay, this happens to be skills that you may possess. It may come naturally to you. It may be unique to you as an individual, but these happen to be skills that sometimes can't be quantified. I mean, how can you go ahead and measure someone's capability of being a good team player? But again, there are skills like analytical skills. Now, some of you may argue that, analytical skills could be a soft skill, it could be a hard skill. See, in simple words, analytical skills could be deconstructing a piece of information so that you are able to draw meaningful conclusion out of it. And though analytical thinking, being able to think critically, being able to problem solve effectively, it may be a soft skill. But there are certain learning tools that you may have to use while you analyze a piece of information that may be specific to the role. So for example, if I had to use a personal example, I learned about an analytical tool that was called Minitab. Minitab happens to be a statistical analytical tool, which I use as a part of my various Six Sigma projects. This is a hard skill that I learned, that I got trained on, which I use to analyze a piece of information. So while analytical thinking may be a soft skill, analytical skills or a specific tool that you use to carry out analytical evaluation may be a hard skill. Think of project management. I know you had a session on project management a couple of days ago, so I'm not going to talk to you all about what project management is. But when you look at a project manager, in order for you to be a good project manager, you need a mix of both. You need a mix of both soft skills and hard skills. Now, soft skills, maybe a good project manager should be, good at time management or should be good at organizing things. And when I say hard skills, a project manager may also need certain hard skills like project planning or budgeting for it. Or a project manager should be able to use tools like Gantt chart, if you'll have heard about it, right? So what I mean to say is that though a project manager or being a good project manager includes a lot of soft skills and hard skills, but being known as a PMP certified individual is a hard skill. You can get trained on it and you can learn about it, and it can be measured as well. Now, given that we've spoken about what hard skills look like, what soft skills look like, I want to draw your attention to what we call as transferable skills, or what's commonly known as transferable skills. So skills like analytical skills or teamwork, project management, or being able to communicate well, or having a good work ethic, knowing a foreign language, being able to manage time effectively, having good leadership skills. I would like to call them out as transferable skills. Okay. Now, if we were to call them transferable skills, based on the little discussion that we have had right now, can we try and define what hard skills would mean, soft skills would mean, and what transferable skills would mean? If you all can try doing that with me, great. If not, let's look at it. I think someone's joined Galaxy M31. Can you please unmute mute yourself? There's a lot of disturbance. Someone's connected from the phone. Can you mute yourself? I'm not sure who that is, but someone who has just joined in from the phone called Galaxy M31. I'd appreciate yourself, right? All right. So picking up where we left. All right, so picking up where we left, we looked at a list of skills. Those could be called as hard skills and soft skills. And we saw out of those hard and soft skills, what could be called as transferable skills. Now, based on that exercise, let's try and define a few of them, okay? So hard skills happen to be those that are teachable. These are skill sets that one can easily measure, right? We define hard skills as the technical ability to do a certain job. And normally you would acquire hard skills, in a classroom, or you will acquire it through an online course or through a work experience for that matter, right? So those are basically hard skills which are required or crucial for you to do a particular job. And hard skills are those that you can measure and quantify, right? On the other hand, we have soft skills like teamwork or communication skills or good leadership skills. These happen to be skills that are unique to or not unique to any specific job. If you are good at communication, if you're good at teamwork, it can be applied to any job in question. So think about it. Are you a good communicator? Are you able to collaborate with people effectively? If you're able to do that, it means that you possess soft skills. And the good news is that these skills can be applied to every job, irrespective of the industry or the functional area. Right? And of course, soft skills are hard to assess. They're not easily quantifiable, if I may call it so. So let's take an example, okay? Think of an example of a gentleman who's able to climb a coconut tree, right? A person who is an expert in climbing a coconut tree decides to go ahead and apply for a job in fishing. Now, of course, he may be an expert in climbing a coconut tree, which is a hard skill that he possesses to do his job, but he may not be equally good at, the other skill, which is fishing, because fishing may need a different set of skill sets. But you know what? Someone who's good at climbing a coconut tree, though he may not be good at fishing, he can actually use a related skill to get that job called fishing. What could that be? Think about it. A person who climbs the coconut tree should also have a good understanding of how the weather conditions are like, right? Is it going to rain? Is it going to be windy? Is it safe to climb the coconut tree at this time of the day? These kind of reasonings probably a person who's good at climbing coconut tree may have, which he can utilize while applying for a job being a fisherman. Because being a fisherman, you also need to have that assessment of, how the weather's like. Is it safe to go into the sea at this point in time? So the point being that climbing coconut tree and fishing happens to be two separate jobs, right? But there are few skills that are transferable that could be applied to any job. For example, I said assessment of climatic conditions, which a coconut tree climber, or even for that matter, a fisherman would need. And the point is, people like you, all of you who are fresh MBA students into the college, you will start thinking about your transferable skills, not now. You'll start thinking about it when you apply for a job. So when you are in your second year and when campus placements come in, I'm very sure all of you all would be, in that mode of running and trying to figure out what your skills are, right? But the good news is all of you all, in fact, every single one of you all already possess a lot of transferable skills. I know for a fact that you all do possess it. How do you ask? If you all think that you aren't certain of how you possess those skills, well, what you need to understand is that as you study in school, as you study at college, right? As you go through several experiences in life, you actually gain a lot of skills. Okay. And those, of course, some of them could be hard, some of them could be soft skills, but a lot of them are transferable skills which can benefit you. And employers actually look at what we call as transferable skills. So whenever you're applying for a job as a fresher, you may not have the actual expertise to land that job, but what employers do is they actually check if you have the potential, right? So the important thing for you to understand is that there are these skills that you have developed. You have the potential, but it's important that you market yourself, right? You have to talk about the potential you have. And when I say marketing yourself, simply listing on your resume that, I am good at communication or I can be a good leader, it may not help. That's not the kind of marketing we want. Rather, if you can substantiate why you call yourself good in HR or why do you think you're a good team player, if you're able to substantiate that, I think that'll be a very important, or rather a turning point in persuading your employer that you are the right fit for the job. Why do you think often organizations have psychometric testing, right? We have companies like Infosys and Deloitte who come in and conduct psychometric testing. And what the test does is the test assesses a candidate's personality, the type of skills they have. Things get assessed. So though a candidate does not experience that may be needed to do the job, the candidate displays a lot of potential through these skills that we've been talking about. Now, given that we understand what hard skills are those that are those can be taught, those can be measured. We spoke about what soft skills are. We said that soft skills can't be measured. Rather, these are something that you inculcate as you go through several experiences in life. Hard and soft skills, they are a certain skills that can be transferred across profession, right? And it can be applied to any industry, irrespective of the type of job it is or the function. Having spoken about that, to move into the second topic, which is understanding how can you identify your skills. I mean, if you think that you are someone who doesn't have any skills, well, you're mistaken. All of us possess certain abilities, and it's just a matter of identifying to introspect and pinpoint that particular skill. So the second element of our discussion is going to be about you feel that you're more capable of doing something than you're actually capable of, right? So the Dunning-Kruger effect basically talks about how we tend to overestimate ourselves. We tend to overestimate our capabilities. And trust me, we all have been there, okay? We all have been there where we kind of think that we are more capable than what we actually are, or we kind of overestimate our ability to do things. And the Dunning-Kruger effect tells you that every individual, like you and me, we go through several stages, like you see on the screen. You go through several stages, right? The first stage is called the Mount Stupid. Okay. Ashwin, can you mute yourself? Thank you. So the first stage is called the Mount Stupid. So Mount Stupid, or that stage called Mount Stupid, states that you at this point in time have a high level of confidence. You're very confident of your capability, right? But the amount of wisdom that you possess is very small, very minuscule. So what happens is our confidence tends to grow out of proportion. And we actually hit that pinnacle called the mountain of stupidity. This is where our confidence is at the highest, but our overall knowledge about a particular topic in question is very, very low. And when I say Mount Stupid, I think it perfectly sums up a fresh college hire. I don't mean y'all, okay? No offense to any one of y'all, not Rajagiri students, students of other college, if I may call it so. So Mount Stupid would be, like a student who is freshly graduated from school or from college. And they probably think that because they've graduated and they have a degree today, they know a lot, okay? And some of them actually are in that state called the mountain of stupidity, even several years after they've passed out from school or college. They may leave the college, enter a corporate job, but they still believe that they have so much knowledge that they could tackle anything that comes their way, or they can tackle any problem that comes their way. That is because the world hasn't shown them yet that they could be very, very wrong, right? They have a lot of confidence, but a low level of competence. This is where all of us start. You and me, when we pass out of college, we have a lot of confidence in ourselves, but we probably lack a lot of wisdom. But that doesn't last very long, because then reality hits you hard. The world actually shows you that, you know what, all of those things that you've been thinking about all this while about yourself is not accurate. Then comes the valley of despair. Now, valley of despair is actually where we all begin to understand that whatever topic we thought that we knew about is actually so deep and so rich that the knowledge that we possess about a particular topic is very little, right? We hardly know anything about it. So this is more so like a light bulb moment, right? It actually hits you that, oh my God, all this while I've been thinking about the fact that I know so much about it, but in reality, I know nothing. And you basically begin to question everything, right? You question everything. You question whether the money that you spent on college education was even worth it at that point in time, right? So that's the valley of despair. You feel like nothing makes sense. Your confidence hits rock bottom. And of course, your competence level is also not great. And then we slightly move into something that's called the slope of enlightenment. Trust me, the slope of enlightenment may not be very smooth. It may have a lot of peaks and valleys as you progress. But the slope of enlightenment is where the real education begins, right? We actually start to figure out that whatever we didn't know about, or whatever we thought we knew about a lot was actually a very small proportion. And we start learning about it and we start gaining experience, right? We start recognizing our own limitations. And see, if you're being very, very honest with ourselves, not all of us will reach very high up when it comes to the slope of enlightenment. Sometimes we all may have limitations, and we may realize that, you know what, my knowledge about this particular topic is only so much, and that's where I am at. And then finally comes some bit of stability there, which is called the plateau of sustainability, which means that you don't master the subject in question, but you rather understand what your limitations are. So it's about the mastery of your limitations than the subject area in question. So in this stage, you actually become more aware. You become more aware of the things that you don't know of, and how can you precisely improve your knowledge in that area. So what I want to tell you all is, don't be a victim to the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you pass out of college where you think that you know everything, and then your confidence hits rock bottom, right? The opposite to the Dunning-Kruger effect, you probably would have heard of this, which is called the imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is where you start questioning everything. It's actually directly opposite to Dunning-Kruger. Dunning-Kruger is where you have a lot of confidence in yourself, and imposter syndrome is where you feel that you have accomplished something, but you weren't deserving of it. You feel that this accomplishment, I didn't deserve it. So for example, some of you, if you all feel that you got into Rajagiri, but it was a mistake and you don't deserve being in Rajagiri, you are basically questioning your accomplishments. Sometimes people who experience the imposter syndrome feel like they're hiding behind a mask, a mask of fraudulence. And they're worried that they will be exposed because of a perceived deception of a skill that they have on their mind. So if any of these experiences sound familiar to you, it is very, very likely that you have something that's called the imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome typically arises when people like us, we are put in a very competitive environment, right? When we are put in a very competitive environment where our capabilities are tested. And imposter syndrome, unfortunately, happens to be very common among fresh college grads, right? Where you have a level of expertise, you do have certain skills, but you don't have trust in your capabilities and you feel that you are not deserving of it, right? And both of these are actually extremes. And we don't want you to experience any of these extremes. What will actually save you from experiencing the Dunning-Kruger effect and also the imposter syndrome is some bit of self-awareness. Self-awareness is actually key. So when I say self-awareness is about recognizing whether you are experiencing imposter syndrome or you're experiencing something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Okay, it's about recognizing that and being able to overcome these. Now, how can you do that? One of the things that you can do is, of course, make sure that you continuously learn. Keep learning, keep practicing. The second thing that you could do is you can actually reach out to people whom you have a lot of faith and confidence in and ask them. Ask them what they think about you. Ask them how they evaluate your capabilities and your potential. Ask them what they think you were good at if you have trouble identifying it yourself. And second is, of course, question what you know already, right? The third thing would be ask questions to yourself and see what you already know about yourself. See, most important thing is you have to have a clear sense of what you're good at, which is you have to have a good sense of self-awareness, which is in technical terms, I would say you should have a good sense of awareness of what your transferable skills are. So a good sense of awareness of your transferable skills will help you build confidence, will help you gain or recognize the value of the skills that you have today. A good sense of awareness of your transferable skills will help you write good resumes. It'll help you write good cover letters. And it'll also help you perform well when you are in an interview. When you sit down with an employer and you are asked questions, and when you're undergoing that difficult situation of being interviewed, having a good understanding of your self-awareness, of your transferable skills is going to greatly benefit you. And when you talk about transferable skills, think of the PAR model, okay? Where P, the P of the PAR stands for talking about the problems that you've handled successfully. The second would be what actions did you take to solve that problem? That's A. And the third would be what results did you achieve as an outcome of the solution that you implemented, right? So when you sit down for an interview with a prospective employer, which all of you all would do in a couple of months from now, make sure that you have deeply introspected and you've identified your transferable skills. But simply writing your transferable skills on your resume will not land you a job. Okay, if you put in a word called, I am highly skilled at communication and I'm a good team player. Well, everyone is capable of doing that. I can write so many things on your resume. But you know what? Recruiters these days are very capable of spotting a phony. If you're going to lie, it's going to get picked up. But if you're going to write something on your resume which speaks about your skills, make sure you're able to quantify it. Make sure you're able to give reasons why you think you're good at a certain skill, right? And of course, learn to, constantly identify gaps that you may have and think of how can you plan your skill development so that you land that employability or that dream job of yours. So the key to everything, key to ensuring that you don't fall a victim to the Dunning-Kruger effect or the imposter syndrome is self-awareness. Okay. Now, how do you gain that self-awareness? Now, if there's anyone on the call who's listening to me, if you all think that you all don't possess any sort of skill, let me tell you that you're wrong. I want to tell you all that all of you all for sure possess at least 5 to 6 skills which are for sure transferable, which you can use to get your job. How can you do that? Okay, how can you identify the skills that you are good at? How do you identify what you possess? Now, of course, I've picked up these from the internet. You will be able to read a lot about transferable skills if you go to Google and put this keyword there. But the first step for you to do would be to analyze what you like doing. All of you all, if you can ask this question to yourself, what is it that I like doing? What is it that I enjoy doing, right? What is it that I'm good at? Ask that question to yourself. You will probably get a lot of answers. You may get answers like, I like playing a particular sport, or I like traveling, or I like dancing, whatever it could be. Identify what you like doing, what you enjoy doing. So if you ask yourself this question, and for instance, the answer you got is, hey, I love traveling. Okay, just traveling. It could be a hobby. It could be just like a part-time activity that you do, but you've identified that you love traveling. The second thing that you can probably ask is, what are those skills that you have used to travel? And of course, you will have to think along the lines of skills that you will find on a job, under a job description, right? So when it comes to traveling, what are some of the things that you would have probably done? You would have planned for your trip. So planning is something that you've done, right? You would have budgeted. Budgeting, the finances is of course an important element of the trip. You may have made decisions on your feet, right? You may have had exigencies, and you may have made decisions to tackle those exigencies. Or while traveling, you may have met with people which help you gain a deep understanding of different cultures. So what you do is you identify what you like doing. Second, you think of the skills. You think of those skills that you may have utilized to actually achieve that one thing you like doing. And of course, the third step would be to think about the source of the skills. So when you say that, you were very good at problem solving, because of traveling, I have become very good at problem solving. Now, that is not a good enough reason, right? Because you travel, how do you become good at problem solving? You can tell people examples of how, while traveling, you experienced an exigency. For example, your car broke down or you lost your wallet, and you came up with a backdoor process, right? You came up with plan B, which helped you effectively or efficiently cover your travel. Or maybe you went on a trekking trip to Ladakh and Leh, and how you navigated through those difficult terrains. Or for that matter, how you met with people on your traveling trips and had deep conversations with them, which helped you gain knowledge about their culture, because of which today you are a very diverse and inclusive individual, which is a very important soft skill, a very, very important skill that sells like hot cake these days. So the important thing is being able to identify what you're good at, right? Being able to identify that those things that you're good at, are they some skills that are utilized? If yes, if you get the answer to be yes for that question, where did these skills come from, right? And you'll have to, of course, think of examples. How good was I in planning for my trip? How good was I in budgeting, right? How good was I in problem solving on the trip? How good was I with people? These kind of questions can act as probing questions to identify your transferable skills. But again, some of you may still struggle. Some of you may think that, hey, I still don't think I have a transferable skill. I don't think I'm really good at something. What you can then do is, if you are really not able to introspect and find out a transferable skill within yourself, what you can do is go on job sites, go on Naukri, go on LinkedIn, look at job positions that you are interested in applying for. And in those job positions, identify what skills are written down. So you will see job postings which says that a person in this role should have project management skill, or a skill called instructional design is preferred. You may find out those skills in a job posting. Try and see if those are the skills that you possess. If not, if that doesn't work for you, then my recommendation to you would be to take a skill assessment. You don't have to pay a huge sum of money to do skill assessment. Today, there's ample resources available on Google. If you just go to Google, type skill assessment template, it'll give you a PDF document that will help you with certain skills that are transferable and certain probing questions that you can ask yourself to identify whether you possess those skills or not. So think about it, okay? And of course, there are a lot of resources. I personally picked up this particular piece of information from Google, right? So just as I could do it, you could actually go to Google, take a skill assessment, which will tell you that, okay, one of the transferable skill is communication. Now, if you are someone who considers himself, herself, or themselves to be good at communication, these are a few things that you should be capable of doing. You should be capable of active listening. You should be capable of engaging people. You should be able to give proper feedback, right? You should be comfortable in conversing in a certain language. There could be certain probing questions that come along with it. And if you're able to say yes to all of those questions, it probably establishes that, yeah, you are good at communication. Of course, you don't have to go through those lenses. I'm very sure that if you sit down, dirty your hands, take a piece of paper, write down things that you love doing and identify the corresponding skills, that's good enough. But for people who struggle with it, well, there are formal resources like a skill assessment available on, on Google as a freeware. Now, let's talk about the third thing today, okay, which happens to be, how do you actually use those skills to land a job? So what did we do? We learned it. We learned what hard skills are. We looked at what soft skills are. We understood what transferable skills are. And then the second thing we did is we learned how can we identify what those skills are. Now, the third thing is, after you identified what those skills are, how do you actually use it to get a job, right? How do you actually market yourself? And I'm going to tell you what I did. Okay. So what you see on the screen happens to be my Rajgiri experience. This is for me, my life at Rajgiri. So how did I use my Rajgiri experience and how did I demonstrate my potential? Okay. This is what we're going to talk about. Now, if I were to tell you that just because you lack relevant industry experience, you are not going to land your dream job. If I'm going to say that to you all, well, I'm very, very wrong. Okay. Just because you don't have a specific experience in a job, that shouldn't stop you from, landing your dream job. And a classic example of it is myself. I did my PGDM in marketing and HR from Rajgiri. And today I work in the HR function as a training specialist in the training and development department. And I like to call myself as an accidental trainer. Why an accidental trainer? Because I have had no formal education in training. I've been in, I have a skill in HR, I have a qualification in HR, but that's all. I never underwent a certification or took up any course specific to training and development. But what helped me land my current job as a trainer are some of the competencies that I developed in Rajgiri. In fact, I can proudly say that about 50% of the competencies that helped me get my dream job were developed at Rajgiri. Right? So a lot of the things that I did at Rajgiri, I was able to talk to my employer about it, which actually helped me get this job of a trainer. So 50% of the competency that is today needed for my job was actually developed while I was in college. And the other 50% today, of course, I have developed it through my experience with my experience doing things on the job. I've learned things from my networks, my relationships, my peers. And of course, a lot of my learning has come from formal training as well. But I still remember the day I had sat down for an interview with my former hiring manager. And I had to talk about what were some of my experiences, right? I had to walk them through what I was good at. And I feel very, very fortunate that I was early in identifying that I had a lot of skills, both soft and hard, which were transferable. And though I don't have a formal experience in training, I can still apply for a job and then be hopeful about getting it. So one of the things that I remember I spoke about was my dad's scholarship, right? So I actually got this scholarship called the DAAD scholarship offered by German government. And I still remember I spoke to my manager that I was actually selected from a list of students based on curricular and co-curricular abilities, right? So it was a check in the box that I probably was a good student at college, right? I also told my hiring manager that this is a scholarship that goes out to only 70,000 people across the globe. So across the several countries, only 70,000 students get the opportunity to win the scholarship. So it was, of course, another check in the box that said that, yeah, probably I have certain capabilities, which is why I have, received the scholarship. And I also spoke in length about how during my, program at Germany, how it actually helped me gain exposure to various cultures, because of which today I have learned about the importance of diversity and inclusion, right? So using something that I received at college, which was a scholarship opportunity, and converting them into skills and giving my manager an example of how, those are my strong skills like diversity and inclusion. I happen to be a very diverse yet an inclusive individual who is capable of respecting people for who they are, right? The second thing that I spoke about, and I remember very, very clearly about it, which was my forms and my Inflore experience. So I was actually a member of Forms, the Forum of Rajgiri Management Students. And I was, of course, we were conducting the Inflore events every year. And I remember I spoke to my manager about how, as a part of Inflore, as a part of Forms, we conducted various national events where we had students from across the B schools across the country, right? Where we managed funds, where we managed sponsorship, where we conducted events, where we engaged several stakeholders. There were various engagement programs as well. And I remember telling my interviewer that one of my very first lessons in project management happens to be my Inflore experience. And I also developed skills like, leadership and numeracy skills. financial skills, being good with numbers. Well, that was a part of my in-Flora experience. I also remember talking about my experience as a student tutor. I'm not sure if it's still there. Ritik can correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were studying there, we actually had a partnership with this university that was called the Sojo University in Japan. So a lot of students from Japan, the Japanese students used to come down to Rajgiri, and we used to have a program that was called the Communication Skill Workshop for them. And me and few of my classmates, we were actually student tutors. So we were actually tutoring them on communication skills or business communication. And I was able to actually talk about how I actually acted as a mentor to them. So I was able to justify the communication skills there. I was able to justify the soft skill called diversity and inclusion. I was able to justify the skill called balancing stakeholders. I was able to justify my skill called project management. And then I also spoke about several outreach programs that Rajgiri did. You know, I think you all have not been through it, but rural sensitization. I can never forget the rural sensitization experience. How much I fell in love with my hostel bed after I came from rural sensitization. I deeply learned to appreciate the little things in life, celebrating those little joys in life. And I think it was the rural sensitization experience that helped me develop a good work ethic, identifying what is important. How do you empathize with people? And of course, my internship opportunity, I think that's the closest that we as students ever get to a real experience, right? So speaking about your summer internship experience and what you learned from it is also a good way of quantifying the transferable skills that you possess on your resume. I have certain practical tips for all of you all, which I think you will benefit from. These are practical tips that have worked very, very well for me. And I, of course, would appreciate if you would try a few of them. One is, of course, never saying no to an opportunity. No matter how difficult it may sound, no matter how busy your day may be, but grabbing the opportunity when it comes your way, I think that's the smartest thing that I've ever done. Even when Ritik approached me asking if I would be interested to do a session like this, it is a very busy time, at work for me. But I wanted to take this opportunity because I knew I would cherish it and I knew I would learn something from this. So I had to say a yes to it. So I've been a person who is open to opportunities, and I would, of course, encourage you all to do that as well. The second thing that has worked really well for me is securing early wins. When I say early wins, it means that you should try and grab every opportunity to prove yourself as quickly as possible and establish a credibility. If I were to give you an example, I was just 10-day old in my current company, and we had an NPS recognition event. NPS stands for Net Promoter Score. So we had an NPS recognition event, and my HR partner just came and asked if I would be interested in hosting the event. And I said yes. And hosting the event not only helped me, of course, gain a lot of confidence, meet new people, but people greatly appreciated my talent. And everyone, they started pointing out that, yeah, if there's an event or if you want someone to speak well, you can probably go pick up Shannon, right? So I was just able to break the ice early and build some credibility for myself very early on in the organization, which has worked very well for me. I cannot emphasize on the importance of upskilling. Okay, if you think that you can do an MBA and that is all the education that you're going to have in your life, well, you're mistaken. Learning is a lifelong process that never stops. It's a cultural journey that never ends. Okay, you have to ensure that you constantly keep yourself on the top of everything. Otherwise, what happens is a pandemic like this hits, and then there's a race or a contest for survival of the fittest. And people who have the most recent skills get appreciated and often succeed. So learn to ensure that even after you complete your education, you keep learning, develop expertise. One thing that I rather worked upon was developing something that was called the expertise in instructional design. I mean, what I do for a living is this. I'm a trainer. And being an accidental trainer, I had no idea about various learning methodologies. There are various principles like ADDIE and Bloom's taxonomy that I'd never heard of. So I had to put in efforts to actually learn it by myself and thereby upskill myself. So that's a journey that should also be lifelong and continual for you. The other thing that I have learned, I'm not good at it, I should admit it, but I try and do it intentionally, which is being assertive. One is, of course, when I say being assertive, it's about you feel confident to put forth your opinion and ideas to others, but at the same time, you also being able to draw boundaries and you being able to say that, hey, no, this is not okay. or no, this is not appreciated, or rather knowing what your rights are. Okay, of course, it's important to accommodate and, be cooperative and, make some reasonable accommodations, but don't bend so much that will break you, right? So you should know where to be, drawing a line and when to say no to things. Planning ahead greatly helps. And it'll of course prepare you better when it comes to exigencies. Marketing yourself is important. Okay, if you are good at something, you should talk about the fact that you're good at it. People often think that your work would speak for yourself. Of course, your work speaks for yourself, but sometimes you also need to speak for yourself and your capabilities. Work can speak for yourself, but I have experienced that it has limitations. Right? And the moment you actually get out there and tell people what you're good at and why you're good at something, I think that makes all the difference. And most importantly is to not be prejudiced. Okay, we all sometimes have unconscious biases in our mind. When we meet a person for our first time, if he is not from Kerala, if he's from, I don't know, some other part of India, we kind of gang up against them, or we don't want to talk in a language that they understand. Or we assume that a certain profession is meant for only certain people, or engineering is only meant for women, meant for men. We sometimes have these unconscious bias or prejudiced thoughts. When you're going to actually enter into the corporate world and, start working, one of the things that can be very detrimental to you is being biased or prejudiced. Today, the organizations appreciate people who are able to value and include each other's differences. That's the competitive advantage that you can actually bring to the table. So if you are someone who's able to appreciate people's culture and respect them for what they are, I think that'll work like a charm for you. But it'll take some effort for you to understand that you are prejudiced. Think of an example over here. If I were to tell you that I want you all to, envision a hospital in your mind. Think of a hospital, think of patients, think of doctors and think of nurses. Try and envision the scenario in your head. And as you envision the scenario in your head, if you actually see female nurses, well, that's your mind playing with you, creating unconscious biases. Can a nurse not be male? Of course they can be. But sometimes our minds are conditioned to think in a manner. When we think of nurses, we only think of females. When we think of doctors, we only think of men, right? That's us being prejudiced. That's the unconscious bias that plays. So when you actually work in a corporate setting, you have to rid yourself of these biases and prejudices. If you do that, that's going to greatly benefit you. You will be able to foster an environment where idea can flourish, innovation can flourish. So these are some practical tips that has worked well for me over the past 7 years of my employment. And I think this is the last slide that I had for you all, which is what I want you all to take away from our discussion today. Okay, I want you all to understand that each and every one of you all are good at something. Okay? Good at something, and I want you all to find out what those skills are. The second thing I want you all to take away from our discussion today is to understand that when you actually apply for a job, your employers, they don't only look for hard skills or only soft skills. Rather, success comes when you're able to strike a balance, when you're able to show a mix of both. But just listing skills on your resume won't help you unless you're able to prove and quantify it. Do understand that employers always don't look for experience, they rather look for potential. They rather look for a person who is able to demonstrate those potential. Understand this. If you prove your soft skills, one will believe that you can learn any hard skill. And if you're able to prove your hard skill, one will actually believe that you're ready to do that job. All right. So put in some effort, do some bit of introspection, identify those skills that you think are good at, and think of examples of how you can actually talk to people about it and market yourself better. But never be victim to those two syndromes that we spoke about, which is the Dunning-Kruger effect or the imposter syndrome. And the key to being, to save yourself from both of this would be, of course, to create some bit of self-awareness. Reach out to people, ask help, and of course, do check out the formal resources that I made a reference to during the course of our discussion. So that's all I have for you all today. I'm going to take a pause over here, and if you all have questions, if you all want me to talk about something additionally, happy to do that.
Thank you, ma'am, for the session. I'll hand over to questions who can ask. Anyone who has questions can ask to ma'am.
on your mind that I can share with you all to maybe reinforce some of the discussions that we have had today, I would be happy to do that.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
According to you, which is the primary skill that one should possess?
Okay, so the one thing that I genuinely believe in is, I can't pinpoint two, but I can pinpoint not one, but two of them. One happens to be being able to communicate well. And I'm not saying that you should be a pro in communication. That's not the idea. But you know what? We all actually have such capabilities in ourselves. But where we tend to fail is not being able to express our ideas, our opinion, right? That's where we all take a hard beating at. So if you are able to, if you're someone who's able to articulate what you want to express, or what your idea is across to your team, I think that's the best skill that you can have. And it's a transferable skill, applies across industry, across functions. So if you can be intentional and think of how can you be a better communicator, that'll be great. And the second thing that can really help you make corporate life a little easy is some bit of empathy. Right? Understand that everyone has priorities, everyone has issues, everyone has challenges. So when you try and put yourself in that position, that kind of contributes to, you know, having a good work ethic. And I think people greatly appreciate an individual who is more genuine than someone who is very, very, you know, very all about hard skills there, right? So learn a bit of empathy, and of course think of how can you foster your communication skills better. I think those are the two things that I can point out for you that has worked well for me, of course.
Thank you, ma'am.
No problem.
Hello, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am. I just wanted to ask you because I heard that I came to know that you are also a Rajagiri. So, ma'am, many of our students are facing some issues, you know, being into this college. You know, it's very much different from the previous experience we've had,
Right.
even in our UG college and all.
Yeah.
So, did you face any such kind of, you know, a very difference, a little hard to get adjusted with the surroundings, the class and all those things? So
Yes, the answer is yes. If that is what you've been wanting to hear, the answer is yes. And of course, see, when you were doing your undergraduate, that was a very comfortable environment to be at, right? You probably were at your home, and you know, learning things, and you know, class schedules weren't as stringent. And the curriculum at Rajagiri is intentionally designed that way so that you become you know, better, or rather you can handle the pressure that's coming along in a corporate job. So being bombarded with assignments, being bombarded with tests, case studies, having very, very stringent, you know, evaluation criteria, these are the things that actually kind of prep you for a world that's going to come after the Rajagiri experience. So every one of us actually struggled. And what actually helped us is, of course, studies, of course, were difficult at some point in time. We were all students like you, right? We've been there. Some subjects we would study well, we would score good marks. Some subjects we wouldn't. But that was just a part of the learning experience. Actually, what I think has really helped us is the time that we spent together as friends. You know, I still remember there were a few subjects that some of us were very, very good at. And we would have group studies and discussions where someone would go to someone else's room and sit down and get that piece of information. So if you're thinking that you are the only individual who are struggling, well, you're wrong. I'm very sure that every single classmate of yours at this point in time is actually going through a tough time. But trust me, it's just going to prepare you for a life that is ahead of you, because the market out there is quite competitive. And as I was already telling you, right, when you learn in Rajagiri, you'll of course get a degree. And imagine 200 of you all are going to pass out next year and all of you all are going to have that Rajagiri degree, right? But what is going to help you all stand out? What will help you as an individual stand out is the experiences that you will have at Rajagiri. So forget the fact that the course is difficult. Of course, the course is difficult. It is designed to be difficult. But my recommendation to you is also cherish the other activities that you will get an opportunity to experience, because that's going to make all of the difference. So trust me, it will get better with time. It's just the initial few days that you find it very difficult to balance off everything. But that actually prepares you for a corporate environment that's coming your way. Yeah, because it's not a bed of roses there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Good evening, ma'am. I hope you're doing good. I would like to know about one skill or a couple of skills that you would want to acquire or you would want to learn in the near future.
Right. So there is this one hard skill that I have on my mind for sure, which is actually something that is going to benefit me from a future role point of view. Though today I work as a trainer, I plan to, of course, shift into learning and development full time. And you know what, few years down the line, I'm also considering maybe freelancing. And I think one skill that I need to develop is be very, very good with instructional design. And I think I was already telling you all this, that though I'm a trainer, my exposure to instructional design at this point in time is very minimum. So how do you design effective curriculum? How do you analyze training needs? How do you help people identify skill gaps? These are some hard skills that I would want to develop for myself. And that's in the hard skill front. And on the soft skill front, the one that I think that I should do more or develop more is learn to be, to say or no more, or learn to be more assertive, right? In a corporate setting, sometimes, as I was telling you, you bend so much to the extent that you kind of hurt yourself, right? You break yourself bending. And there are some people who are able to assert themselves very beautifully, right? They say or no, and you don't feel offended about it. And I think that's one thing that I haven't learned quite well. I'm so worried about offending someone else. And there are these barriers that I have to overcome that I end up compromising and putting myself in a position that sometimes is really not appreciated. So one skill that I am really intentionally working upon is learning to say a no and helping myself understand where my boundaries are. So a hard skill and a soft skill for you over there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks. Anything else?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, ma'am.
Hello.
Ma'am, can you share some challenges faced by you in your work environment or any place, means your education, anywhere? Can you share some challenges which was faced while developing skills, or it would be anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I think challenges have been way too many. And one of the challenges that I struggled with, and I don't mean it in the bad sense, but the company that I work for actually had a lot of people who came from various premium institutes, right? Like the IIMs and the XLRIs. And there was a time as a part of my employment where I remember my confidence had taken a major toll. And I was actually a victim of what we actually learned today, which is called the imposter syndrome. My confidence took such a toll where I actually started questioning whether I will be able to perform well on my job. And that was because I was unnecessarily comparing myself with other people. And when I say comparing myself, I was actually comparing myself and believing that I am of the inferior kind. And this actually happened for some time, but I think it was several projects that I worked with these individuals that I realized that at the end of the day, though you pass out from a premium institute or not, how you actually put to practice some of the things that you learn is important. So the way they studied few things would have been different from the way we did. They probably would have been through even more challenging, educational curriculum. But in a work environment, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what college you passed out from, right? Or what course you did. If you were able to effectively do the job that you've been hired for, I think that is all people appreciated. And it was just that some introspection that I had to do for myself. So yeah, imposter syndrome, often comparing me to people who I thought were from, premium institutes and assumed that they would be better than myself. I think I had a similar issue when I was in Rajgiri as well. I remember a time where, again, my confidence took a toll. And that was when I was actually on a scholarship at Germany. And the reason being that when we went to Germany, we had a lot of stereotype. We had a lot of innate fears in us that, Germans aren't friendly, or they are very good at education and they're very good at presentations, and that you wouldn't be able to compete with them. So I actually went with a lot of preconceived notions. And it actually took me just some bit of experience and time to figure out and understand that they're not very different than us. And if they're good at presentations, you can also be one like them with a little bit of homework and hard work at your end. So yeah, so often challenging my level of confidence is something that I have struggled with, but I've learned to overcome it.
So yeah, ma'am, thanks a lot. I guess there are no more questions. Actually, I would also thank you because I'm from the same background as yours, BTech Biotechnology, and I'm also studying a HR, MHRM. So actually, it was an insightful session for us all. So I would request Amanda for the vote of thanks, and we'll end the session after that.
Sounds good.
A very good evening to one and all. I, Amanda, on behalf of the entire fraternity of Rajgiri College of Social Sciences, would like to extend a hearty vote of thanks to Ms. Shanna James for sparing time off your busy schedule to share your thoughts and to facilitate this alumni interaction. Thank you for briefing us about your humble beginning at Rajgiri, shedding light on the topic hard skills, soft skills, and transferable skills, teaching us to identify the skills within us and for providing proper guidance on how to utilize them as we embark on our corporate journey. I'm sure that all my classmates and myself found this session extremely meaningful and valuable. I would like to thank the OCR committee and faculty members for organizing this meet. Lastly, I would like to thank my fellow Rajagirians for your active participation and patient listening. Thank you.